When we put this out for construction bid, and unexpectedly, we came back like 42% higher than what the estimate was. So we had a meeting, I think in early July, looking on what we're going to do. And essentially, we didn't get any real options other than just try for more money. And that was essentially the only option we had. So based on that, we formed a panel of residents that have very specific experience in various aspects of municipal projects, either funding, contracts, engineering firms, specific sewer projects. So based on that, we had 5 people. 3 are here tonight. Previously, we presented recommendations regarding the contract and the bid. So that's included in tonight's final document here. So if people can read along there, that'll
No,
try to.
it might not. I can't, the mouse doesn't work.
Do you want me to take it down there?
Yeah, try it.
So
If you put it on here, it will.
No, I think it's a.
it was
thing.
posted on the website. Maybe we can grab that.
It's not a question of,
Okay.
I mean, it's there. It's a question of
Yeah.
navigating it
Yeah.
as we go through it.
I can sit down there if you want.
It might be,
So we had 14 recommendations. Everybody's had a chance to read it, right? We posted it on the website. All the board members got a copy of it. So the intent would be that with the expert panel here tonight, ask any clarifying questions or input. So first, I'd really like to thank the panel members for giving a lot of their private time meeting and researching and developing some very good recommendations. I feel personally a lot better that we've got options now that I wasn't feeling that we had many options in July. So I really appreciate what you did, and I think it was successful.
Yeah,
So-
thank you.
You all set there on the audio visual?
Sort of.
Okay.
I think Gary might be in charge of just moving it.
So this was, again, so people can read along instead of just listening to us, but my thought would be to go down the recommendations, as board members ask questions, and then ultimately, I'd like to be organized on this and follow through on the recommendations. So we can maybe volunteer to sponsor, to completion, or discuss who is the right owner to answer these recommendations. Might want to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay. So the first one is really a repeat from the August meeting. Roy Navick did a very interesting, applied his federal contracting background and used his price analysis methodology. And the recommendation is to apply that throughout the bid. So I know there was some discussion on strategic bidding and that collection system might not have been the right method, but nonetheless, I think we've lost sight of that. The treatment plant itself was a separate bid, and that was like 50% high, and that was a whole different firm, right? That wasn't Gymo. So a whole different engineering firm ended up with worse results statistically. And then the electrical bid as well was way off, actually higher than the collection system. So the thought would be and then, Roy was just doing on his volunteer time, so he just didn't do a full analysis. He just provided examples of what the method is. So the recommendation here would be to go through the bid, because we're gonna have to rebid this, all 3 contracts, go through it while we have the time here, and use this methodology and improve that bid specification.
Now we have Dank able to help us with some of this too now, right?
In general, people that work.
Sorry, that might be Terry. It is. But if I take it, Terry he wanted to join us.
Sure.
Yeah, Terry.
Please flash himself.
Is the Zoom up to speed?
We're just,
YouTube, he can.
yeah, he can watch it, but he won't be able to participate that way. If he wants to participate, we'll have to do it on a cell
You can
phone.
YouTube it, but can't participate because they're using the screen apparently.
You can
But what,
call mine.
oh, it's waiting for Henderson to fire up. Dave, can you hook up with Terry so you can utilize the connection with your cell phone?
Sure.
Yeah, Dave's gonna hook up with you on his cell so you can hear what's going on, okay? Oh, he's gonna call you. Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I kind of figured Terry'd be calling.
Yeah. So I forgot to mention Terry Brown was one of the members.
He couldn't make it tonight, he's stuck in Syracuse, so.
So people can see us in a little square in the corner.
I don't know.
No, they
Yeah.
can. That's what they can hear us, but they can see us.
Good.
Hi, Terry.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay, so Terry, the state Poland, so we have you on speakerphone with the meeting, so the audience is listening as well.
Okay, I'll put it on mute, just listen.
Okay, no, feel free to chime in anytime you feel like it.
Okay, we'll do.
All right, people hear that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep, I'm good.
all right, so just to recap, last night, actually was one of the recommendations that we seek a different project manager for this project for the period between now and construction start. So, I forget what recommendation it was, but yeah, so recommendation 6 was seek other options for project management services that better align with the needs, performance expectations of the town. So, last night we approved a contract with DANK, the Development Authority of the North Country. So they're gonna take over as project manager between now and construction start. So Guy Mo is the design engineer, and we're the town, we have responsibilities. The bond council has responsibilities, municipal solutions, town attorney, so there's a lot of different entities. And what we need, and I feel we weren't getting, was a project manager with those 5 entities and make sure things identified, they're on top of things, they're pushing people to get things done, setting deadlines, and holding people accountable when they're not meeting the deadlines. So, get this project to construction start. So that's been done. And as Lindsay was saying, they're now a resource for us to use as we go through these recommendations. So anyway, recommendation number 1 was this performing a price analysis methodology. My thought was to assign this to GIMO and then, review their product and maybe have the project manager, quiz them on, did they do it properly?
Do they even know how to do this though?
Well, I don't know, but if they do, there's a considerable price attached to it. So before we do that, we want to make sure. I think working with GIMO, we want to be very specific in what we're asking, and that's where DANK will come in. So
Right, so DANK oversees.
DANK will oversee what we ask for them.
One of the criticisms I heard when that methodology was first discussed was its lack of applicability to municipal projects such as this.
Oh.
And I don't know if it's founded or not. Is anybody, or maybe Terry does, or Mark, does anybody have any thoughts on this idea that some guy might charge $100 a foot and some guy might charge $200 a foot, but they,
$400 a foot, yeah.
right, and it comes out somewhere else because they know what they're
Yeah.
trying to hit. Is that?
I do understand the strategic methodology of their bids.
Can you explain it?
Well, what they're doing is items that they think that they're very efficient at. And that they think there might be change orders, applicable. They're gonna price very, very high. Might, when looking at pretty limited in any ability to, so that they're not gonna get stung. They're gonna try to keep it lower. Don't know if there's a way to prevent it. know, it's just one of those things.
So you've seen this methodology before?
Yeah.
That's traditional in almost anything that you would put out for bid, right? I
Yeah,
mean, any
anything that's-
project you have.
It's a unit
Right.
price
Or
bid,
percentage?
they try to be clever about it, so.
There is a way to prevent it, and that's to put out a bid for design, build, construction as a lump sum, and the contractor takes all those responsibilities. And, you know, you have to know the contractor, but if they're a respectable company, and they say, we can do this whole thing, design, implementation, change orders, everything for $42 million, then you have them as the identity that you can go after. If they don't, well, it was the designer's fault. It was, the way they bid it. So I think that eliminates some of it, but it's might be more costly at the beginning.
Well, there are other advantages if we can consider design build, because we might be able to get them to roll the existing indebtedness in. The reason we can't adjust the EDUs are, many of them shouldn't have ever been but we can't adjust that at this point because we are in of $2 million. If in fact you do a design build, they might roll that in and still keep it under cost estimate. And that, I think that would make adjustments to the district as appropriate.
So any other thoughts here? My thought is, again, you have the waste treatment plant, you have the electrical that this could apply to. And I don't know if you remember, somewhere March, April, we had a specific workshop just trying to be proactive on understanding what are we gonna do if the bid's out high, right? And the one option that GYMO offered was to do exactly this. Go relook at the bid wording, see where the high numbers were, and is that an opportunity to rewrite it, reclarify it, and maybe if it's a clearer wording, that it would be a smaller bid.
Why don't we get a quote from them,
We'd hold off until DANK gets through their first 30
their
days
first
of
assessment?
and then
That's
let
fair.
it move from there, because we've
If we
already
need this or
commit
not.
if we need it
Okay.
or not.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to doing it. I still struggle with, we go out to bid and some guy's looking at this and he says, I know there's gonna be a lot of change orders there and I know I'm gonna have a number on that. Short of doing what Coleman's potential, I don't know what limitations we have. We're not gonna have a not to exceed per unit price or anything like that, right? I mean, I don't know how we can get much more granular than asking them for their unit pricing. And at the end of the day, the lump sum is what wins the bid, right? Some guy do everything for a penny and then have it all built into one, right? I mean, what? I'm not opposed to it. I just don't know what we get out of it.
Okay, so the action would be that our project manager, DANK, will look at this recommendation and look at the bid. They've already got this, they're already looking at it. Determine if,
Come back.
That
Something
bid is
to-
irrelevant now.
what's that?
That old bid is irrelevant. We don't have it.
I'm at the specification, the written, are we gonna just put it out just like we did last time, or is there some wording revisions that
And
we?
DANK can help.
Right, that's the thought. Okay, so this would be DANK, all right? Anything more on this recommendation one? Okay,
Dave, there is another comment.
okay,
This project is a dirty project, a nasty project. Going into old houses, septic tanks, it's not start from scratch on a brownfield and you know exactly what's gonna happen. They've got to, the contractor has to pad it for the worst situation they may run into. You know, they've got all the details, but no one really knows how nasty it's going to be. And it is all over the place, into people's property, into their sewer system, with a deadline date. Lose, so they're gonna protect themselves and their call. You have what you have. I think what's important to say is that the offer that Gymo took from the town gave them what system they were going to use, where the treatment plant was going to be, all those things. It was part of the contract. You will use the step system. You will use to this place everything was itemized. They offered to give an opinion on the price. No, nothing hard. That's what the contract says. The designer should give an opinion. If this board doesn't, or the board, if they don't like it, they can go get an independent review. An independent review was offered. The board didn't accept it. So these surprises shouldn't have been as large as, as
42%.
surprised as they were. It's the way it was designed. It was, out of the blocks, it was a problem.
Yeah, so what Coleman's referring to is, I forget what year, what month, but once the estimate was done by the design firm, there's companies that they call them estimators, right? That would have gone through this, provided independent assessment of that estimate number.
Yeah, that wasn't long ago, right? That was late last year, I think, or,
I don't know.
yeah. I don't think it was.
I have it on the file.
There was a
Yeah.
letter from
Yeah.
Gymo saying this is a company in Connecticut or someplace that
Right.
you might want to go to.
Right.
It was a $30,000 cost and it wasn't approved.
From your experience, is that using that independent estimator is a typical,
Well, it's a check.
I know, but how often? It's frequent.
Many, many times.
Okay, so that's normal,
Yeah.
was not to do that. Spend the money on that estimator.
A lot of engineering firms have an estimator on staff.
Right. Which can be called an expert, independent, some ethics there. But even the wording though, for what Gymo was supposed to do, give us your opinion as to what the cost might be. Those were the words out of the contract. Okay, I thought this was an opinion. Nobody's checking it.
There's a later recommendation that goes into the contract. But I would expect something more than that, right? I mean, more than just, their names on it, right? That should be, they should stand by it, right? Should be accountable to it. I would have expected they would have padded it, right? That's what I expected.
Yeah.
That we wouldn't be in here having to rebid. So anyway, that's good input.
Okay, yep, got it.
Considering the rebid, revised project cost. Lessons learned from other municipalities that have recently installed the step system. So the thought here would be so we're gonna do again, if this goes out to bid, and it comes back high, what do we have in our toolbox to accommodate a high bid? So that's into this, was to have some ready options that, okay, we're $1 million short, now what? Is there some things we could do with the trinket, but can we provide alternate,
This was like saying, hey, on this road, we'd use the vacuum system. It's way out there in the middle of nowhere, we'd use that instead or something.
so Mark, I don't know if you want to, go to a deep, but he alluded that there was some properties that should never been here. I think what he meant to say was they're really high cost per unit, right? They're not a dense area, so they're spread out. The piping laying is, a lot longer.
The prime example
Bedrock.
is Route 72, Harbor View Road, where it's 6 inches of soil and then, limestone. It's not shale, it's just dense rock that they've got to break down. And yet the houses are, quarter mile between one another or spread out so far that it doesn't make it a cost effective, place to install it. But by my intent in saying that, or some places that should never have been in the district. It wasn't strictly cost or constructability. It was the fact that they're 2 miles from the body of water that we're trying to protect. They never should have been in it.
Right, so that's a different one we'll pick up later, I guess, yeah. So this one would be, just like Mark stated, this Harbor View, the cost per house is really high due to less dense bedrock, or I think the flip side would be it's prime soil that you could just do a normal household, wastewater rule. So that's an option we could have in our back pocket if we come up short with the funding.
I don't think we put Gymo on this. I think we see what Dank has to say.
Do we have any early indications of the viability of doing on-site systems for, say maybe that stretch of road, or maybe even the far end of County Route 123, where you probably run into some of those similar
It'd
issues?
certainly be a lot less expensive than the $110,000 per EDU that we're currently looking at.
I
Plus,
agree entirely, but the legalities or the,
yeah, and that's one of the recommendations, to look at the legalities of that. I think the issue that you get into is you're building a system that really requires, very little maintenance, very little.
You're charging them.
Yeah, and yet you're going to be charging them the same EDU as everybody else.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to that property owner.
that's a bind right there.
But if we're doing it, don't we retain the operational cost of it? So if it's still
There
back,
really isn't any. I mean,
Well, you say that though. I replaced a large portion.
I mean, I
repaired a
replaced,
large portion.
you
of my-
still gotta maintain the septic tank. You gotta pump that out every.
Or the leach
5
field
years
or-
so.
all of that. I mean, you still have a annual, or not annual, but at least a few times.
Yeah.
Not to the
Very-
extent of the
very little
system, I
maintenance
understand.
required on a leach field, but yeah, I mean.
And that would all have to be,
Depends on where
look
you-
at.
that would have to be specified in the sewer use law, with the town attorney, what's legal, we can charge.
Yeah, we could charge a reduced rate potentially as
Well,
well.
I don't know. I don't even know if we can do it, right? Like,
I don't know if we can
So,
do that.
right, so again, these
Right.
guys work.
No,
on
I
it.
know.
Yeah,
I know. I just,
So
I
it's
don't want
an
to get into
option.
those details until we know if it's
Exactly.
even.
All of this is a lot of details that
Yeah.
we would have to get into.
There
It's an option that we didn't have
there
before.
is a community that has mixed use, Powellville.
Okay,
They have mixed, everybody's got a Powellville, so it's kind of down in and then your way up. They have mixed, they have some that's on sewer, traditional, they have some, this septic that you're talking about. And they have their sewer well is written as such. They don't have a treatment plant to worry about. It's connected with.
Yeah, that's right.
So they just say it there. I can't remember what the exact breakdown was because it was last year when I brought that, but what caught my eye, I keep remembering, it was the only one I came across that was mixed.
no, that's good. So again, all of this, there's more detail if we choose it. At least we conceptually know there's an option there. And then under this also was Red Hook, New York is a good example. They just finished installing a full system over 2 years. They've had a lot of problems, but it was all, according to their superintendent, he's actually happy with the design of the system. The contractors that built it, they had a lot of problems. So he told me with a company that installs it, don't use them. They're not one of the bidders here. But I think it's worth talking to them, all the lessons they learned as they installed it.
Yeah.
So. Okay, anybody else have any questions there?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
For the second bullet here, is the notion that the bid contract would be written such that a bidder for that contract could say, I can reduce the cost if you allow me to redesign X, or are you gonna provide them a spec that they have to bid to, period? Okay, can the RFQ be written so that a vendor can come back with recommendations on how they can reduce cost?
That's the exact question that I asked Dank when we were interviewing them, when I talked to them. I don't know the answer. They just said that was a good question, but I didn't get an answer for it. So I'm guessing that's another thing that they would be looking at when they continue to review I know it seems like we're putting a lot of emphasis on Dank, but I'm really hoping that they're going to dig in and help us get a lot of what this panel brought up and get us some back concrete answers.
Because it sounds like there are a lot of contingency design
Yes.
concepts that are being tossed around,
Yep.
but you can't write them all as a design in RFQ.
Yeah.
It's just not possible.
I'm never gonna get that.
That's right. Let me read number 3. Prior to any rebid, complete legal review of the existing contract with the engineer and provide recommendations. This is you're referencing the old GYMO contract, right? Yeah, completely agree. I think that needs to be redone.
So, Coleman, the example you used of pick something out of the air, do you feel that wording was not standard, that's not good wording or not typical wording?
It certainly left the town open for not getting the same quality or details they should have gotten, and should have been very explicit what you were going to get and when you're going to get it. And to go further on how they manage the contract and manage the construction, that's pretty vague in the agreement that the town made with GYMO.
So I haven't read it lately. We'd have to see if we're able to revise it based on,
That contract's over.
The contracts are done. We're done with GYMO with the current contract. So where you go in the next phase, they've already delivered, they believe that they've delivered the product that we contracted with them for. So for instance, correct, David?
So my understanding is the design phase is complete.
Incomplete. So one of the questions I asked them was, when we met, do we
so we would
expect,
start a new contract.
we'd have to have a new contract, which
Okay.
is, right. So we're, as far as they're concerned, they did the design project, it went out to bid, because my question was, if we put it back out to bid, they should review and make sure what we're putting back out is correct. That was not in the contract, which it is in a lot of engineering contracts where it says they're going to stay with the contract until the bid is successful.
Okay.
And it was not in their contract. So we're kind of left holding, like, we got what we got. We got what we got
For $2 million.
for $2 million. We got it.
So to clarify,
Yeah, I can make a
sure,
comment
go
on
ahead.
that.
Thanks, Terry.
Well, the one thing, this was a lump sum contract to deliver a project,
Yep.
total of $13 million. And nowhere that I've seen was there a modification to that contract that modified that number. And the problem with that contract, just briefly, is it's not standard to have lump sum projects for these types of municipal work. They're typically cost plus a fixed fee. And one of the reasons is when you look at your invoicing, they just invoice you a percentage complete. If it's a cost plus fixed fee, you see actually the number of hours in the actual work that the engineer had done. So there's some really gaps in that contract. And just a comment, it was out of the ordinary to have a lump sum. But if you're having a lump sum, I think Mark will agree with me. The positive is if I can bring my engineering costs under the 2.1 or 2.2, I'm going to make a lot of profit. Now, if I exceed that and have to do more work, I have to eat it. And you have to write it off.
Here.
So that's really this whole legal issue related to that contract. And the fact that it wasn't, you'll see all the redactions. Redactions typically have to be initialed by both parties. And there's no redactions in that contract. So that's why we were recommending, a complete legal review of the contract. And quite frankly, I don't know how you verified actually the cost that you were billed, because they bill on a percent complete. And who knows what percentage that complete was during the project. So just my comments on that. But I think Dank, having Dank on board is going to clarify a lot of this.
And just to clarify the answer I gave you there, Karen, as far as, GYMO being complete, their contract had a bunch of tasks So the design phase, I believe, is gone, but there's a construction documents phase. I believe that's done, I'm not sure. There's a bidding phase. There's a construction administration phase too. So I believe there's still open items there. But they're done on certain tasks, but there's future tasks that they, just because.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought they were gonna run inspection and,
Yeah.
on the,
But that's another
that's-
portion of the process.
what is it?
On
Yeah,
the same-
entirely, but it's
But you're
part
gonna
of the
pay
same
more
contract.
money, but it's
Oh, of
not,
course, but
right.
it's still in their contract.
correct.
No, my
Yeah.
question was, I guess, we gotta look.
There's clauses for
At the terms.
either party.
Get out.
Right.
There's an exit clause.
Yeah, what are the terms we would
Right.
renegotiate if we choose to renegotiate with them that part of the contract?
So on number
I think we
3,
definitely should look and see, are we able to do that?
Well, why don't we, again, see when Dink reviews with their contract people.
So we can have them.
They are doing that.
Perfect.
They've requested, I think if you saw the list, they got everything
Everything.
that we've
Okay,
got
awesome.
in the project.
Okay.
Okay, next recommendation. Provide legal review of the following. So this is more, so last item was specific to the engineering contract. And then there's various other bullet points here.
So and these are the details of things we should look at in that contract.
Right,
Okay,
well,
or potentially revise, right?
I don't know, you guys have any more insight or input there?
It looks like these are adds or revisions that may be needed. So maybe we should share these with Dank.
They have it.
They have
They
these
have
recommendations? Perfect, okay.
All right. Number 5, obtain all design documents produced in the development of the contract. So Guymo has agreed on this, so we just need to follow up. I've asked for
Hey, Jerry.
putting it on a hard drive.
Let me just go down.
We have it in
Gary,
our
Yes.
files.
Scroll out. We have any more on that.
keep going, keep going. I'm gonna do it.
All right. So 6 was the project management services. We talked about that. Dank that's complete and ongoing.
Yeah, just use your fingers.
Okay, number 7 is specific to once the construction phase gets started. Things are gonna move fast, right? And we need to make sure we're ready. So we're on number 7,
These don't have numbers.
Yeah.
But you're on it, the clear expectations, yeah.
right?
Why don't you just move up here?
I know, I might as well. I'll come sit with you guys.
So yeah, this is getting the whole organization clear, so once we start construction, we can, quickly move through, understand the status, have a clear process for approving change orders, et cetera. Any questions there?
So this is stuff that Dank would definitely handle then, right? Correct.
Well, this would be another phase, right? Once we get to
Project
construction
management,
start,
oh.
right?
But this is we'd assume Dank was gonna stay with us through construction and would assist with this. This is project management.
We would have to prove that they've provided a phase 2, which would be construction oversight, but
Yeah.
that's not approved at this moment, but
Okay,
agree.
okay, that makes sense.
I think these questions were listed so that they seem to be missing in the contract we have with Dymo. So any moving forward, they should be added.
If we have the opportunity to add the Gyno contract, these things,
Whoever,
So there's a contract
Or whoever.
administration,
correct?
task 5, and that would be before we award that, before we move forward with that, make sure we understand what this looks like. All right. Okay, number 8 would be develop contingency design options for collection and treatment system for the current and or revised district in the event sufficient funding is not obtained.
Sorry, Mark.
Evaluate
Yeah.
excessive cost per parcel, determine if these outliers can be removed or alternate individual systems used to meet the Department of Health requirements. Include individual stub out laterals, and recommend using an independent engineering firm to evaluate life cycle cost analysis. Any questions there?
So the recommendation for the independent engineering firm, the life cycle cost analysis, that's to say the fear that this system isn't gonna last the life of the loan, the 30 years,
40.
40, sorry,
No, it could be 40.
could be 40.
Not necessarily. This would be, we don't get the funding. We've got a $40 million design. Can we look at a different design that would be cheaper within our funding,
Okay,
obtained funding? So there's a separate, I don't know how level of detail we want to go here. But Mark has developed a conceptual design with, some numbers that would look at the feasibility of an alternate design.
so I think we as a board need to decide when we would engage in that, right? Like we're saying, we're going down the path with this existing design, which I think, again, I'm going back to Dank, is gonna look at everything for us. And we need to decide, and this goes back to having a robust timeline, which we don't have, which Dank is supposed to develop for us. Where is the point in time that we would need to make decisions on contingency design options? Is it we don't get funding, right? So we don't get the funding we need for the current system. Or we know that the bid is just gonna be too high, right? So those are the two, I would think, the 2 points that we would say we need to go back.
Yeah, we'd have to spend money here, right?
Right,
So that's part of the analysis. Is the money saved? What does it cost to transition from one design to the next?
okay. That makes sense to me.
Okay. Any questions there? Any more input?
Do you have prices for the alternate? Can you talk
Is it
about
less-
that?
Is it less than, or is it comparable? Am I allowed to share that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's up to, yeah.
Okay,
We actually have it. I don't know if you want to call it up.
yeah.
There's a spreadsheet.
Yeah, the spreadsheet's probably kind of messy for a year, but alternate design was to locate a vacuum station down midway in the harbor to pull everything from essentially the launching ramp and everywhere in between, and then down to Bayshore Drive. We would need a step system to keeping the district the way it is. We would need a step system for Eastman Track, and then for the from the Stony Creek up the hill to pick it up, so that the vacuum system could pick it up there. And then a similar situation with the Hamlet, a vacuum station there, to pull it Harbor View and then down towards someplace in the center of the hamlet. And then have two separate treatment systems. The considerable savings associated with the one, you don't have to go as deep because most of the line is vacated. But significant savings in going with a different type of treatment plant that is suitable to discharge to the harbor.
You don't have electrical involved.
And then that is probably the biggest thing. The electrical associated with, the individual plants and then having a backup generator at the vacuum station that, would also operate if there was ever a power outage, would continue to operate the plant and the vacuum station. So there's no site electrical, which I think was probably one of the biggest busts on this project.
You don't know.
And that's where I think the contractors padded it the most.
yeah.
Because
You don't know the age of their
Yeah,
electrical
I mean,
system and whether it needs to be upgraded. or
there's a
whatever.
lot of cottages.
There's a lot of variables.
A lot of cottages that probably have a 60 amp system. I know several that are in the district. And some other people that we know. So, there would be a significant upgrade, cost to that. The utility company's they're gonna provide you a new service as a whole, to provide whatever amperage upgrade that they need. But I think that's probably one of the biggest breaks in the contract was the electrical that they don't have a good feeling for.
But also, isn't there, I know you discussed about possibly tap into existing septic tanks versus having to put new
That-
ones in. I know that's a little gray
That was
area there too.
that rate, currently, we took a portion of the district that we needed to, that Dave had a task associated with looking at the number of permits over a certain period of time within a small portion of the district. I think it was around 25% of those residences, EDUs, have new systems. So we applied that 25%. So essentially I said, all right, we've got out of the 400 EDUs, we've got 100 septic tanks that we can, meet code and that we can utilize. I'm guessing there's probably more than that, but at this point, unless we're gonna go knock on doors, which I'd be happy to do if you wanna, go do that. But, significant time. So I did, we just extended the 25% throughout the district and said, there's 100 tanks that we don't need. And it's a significant amount of money. Though I believe in my estimate, I carried an average of all three bids, which was right around $15,000 to pull it out, clean it out, pull it out, dispose of it, and then put in a new tank. So anyways, that, total of that system is, with a 20% contingency, is around 26 million.
Where are you gonna put this
Considerably
collection
less.
center in the park? And how big is this
That, I
collection
don't
center?
know.
What was your
though,
question,
Hi, Jan,
Judy?
can you speak up?
Where would we
He says
put it?
there's gonna be a collection center put in the harbor.
And
Okay, we already know how tight that road is. Where would that be? And two, how large is that facility going to be?
I don't know if
Sure.
I'm speculating. There is a piece of property that I believe is for sale. Used to be Northern Yachts, the metal building on the water. That's a perfect location for it.
Yeah, we have-
And my cost estimate, I mean, right now, I think the assessed value of it is $356,000. In my estimate, I included $750,000 to obtain that property.
So you think that the community is gonna be okay having a treatment collection plant right in the middle of the park?
We have one now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're concerned about odors, is that what you're?
I'm just asking if you think,
Yeah.
if you think that you're not gonna get pushback for having collection systems. in the middle of the park.
Are we getting pushback on the current design?
We are, so that's why I'm asking, do you not
So,
think you're gonna get
alright,
pushback?
So
I mean,
the pushback, I think, would most likely be people thinking that there's gonna be strong odors. By having it contained in a building, we can, and I do have costs in there for odor control. But I do wanna point out the fact that the water side has got one right next to
I know
the.
the water side, yes, I'm very familiar with their system, but I just.
That's the same system I'm proposing.
I also know how much that system costs. A lot more than the future stuff. A way lot more.
Well, I got prices from a vendor that gave me prices 2 months ago, so.
We're not here to argue with
No, I'm
you.
not
I mean, these guys are volunteers who've spent a ton of time to present
I
to
didn't
us.
say, I said $750,000
We're not-
for the property.
We're not gonna argue with you.
Not for the system.
I'm like,
That's just to obtain the property. I've got a breakdown on the whole system.
I'm just asking, yeah, I'm just.
Well, let's ask in a
Yeah.
You've already
friendly
asked these
way.
questions, I'm asking two questions because
Well,
I remember
question
when the other one was
cost, and I
going
don't
and
think
it,
you understood
no, I
the
wasn't,
cost.
if it came out that way, it's not the way, but I was
You didn't.
asking.
The cost, the $750,000 was to obtain the property. I've got another $250,000 to restore it and make it so that it's not susceptible to high water as well. But that's perfect size, it's a perfect size building for it. That's a perfect location for it. So if we contain it, I think that's what we should do.
So I think that it would be great to, and I don't know if Dank would be willing to sit and look at what Mark has done, because I think that it's an amazing
Happy.
job that you've done, and to look and say, here's some other options that we have.
I think we're gonna set up a couple meetings with them, so we'll reach out to the committee and, I mean, they explained to me that there'd be lots of meetings between now and their final report, so
Okay.
I think you do.
Thank you for all of this work, gosh. Amazing amount of work.
Welcome.
Yeah, one of the first questions that Carrie, which is one of the engineers at Dank, asked me is why we didn't use the lake
I've
system.
been
And
asking that for 20 years.
I didn't know the answer to that, but that was their first question. And I think the answer was where would we get into the lake to be able to do that?
Yeah.
But if that's there, that.
The boat launch was always floated as an option
It
too.
was, but it wasn't the right location for a
Right.
vacuum because we couldn't vacuum the
Well, I
whole.
just mean in terms of a way to, a means to access
No,
the
no.
lake, but yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of the first ones. So I think if we put it all together, we can come up with, so if I look at this and we were to say, when we get all done, I'm gonna say the what if. So if we get all done and we know that this system isn't gonna work, I mean, it's gonna work in partial, but the cost of it's gonna be too impact to get in. Are we really gonna be back to doing a whole new set of drawings?
Well, a significant portion of those drawings can be reused. All the site work and the plots
Mhm.
and the profiles of the district, we've got those. So I don't believe it would be, it's not going to be a complete redesign of anything, no.
You got those Dymo, right?
Yeah.
And we have Guymo's drawings,
You own
we
them.
have them. We own them. And actually,
Yeah.
Dank has them. You guys have all had them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have them, but we're still gonna have to revise them. I mean, we're gonna have to go in and do some changes on them, and that's not cheap either. And one of the things that's odd is Dank does not design. So Dank will tell us what we do, but we have to contract with an art, like a firm to do that. That's
They
not,
don't stand for it.
that's not what they do.
Yeah,
They don't want to compete with the other engineering firms in the area.
Do you have everything from Gymo though? Because Dave mentioned that we were still going to get stuff on a hard drive. Do they still have outstanding stuff in their office that the town does not have yet?
We believe so. So that's what that recommendation is tracking.
So but again, I mean, I could be really optimistic on this combination and partnership with Dank, but I think they're going to have a better connectivity to get what they need from Gymo by asking the right questions than Dave and I or whoever else is sitting here to get. So I think that's where we're hoping for the $15,000 that we can get a quicker, better communication. So that's I think that's the goal we all thought about when we went into this. That, and I think we've asked some people to put an innate amount of time into a sewer system that there really isn't in their job when they came to work on the town board. But very thankful that
Or
everybody
Just
did
happen to
this.
be
Volunteering.
educated and live in Henderson, thank you.
That's why Mark has been working on this for over 20 years.
I know.
And it fell upon deaf ears. And for him to come back and redo this all and put his time and effort in this again, that's a lot.
And I think that's recognized. I think that is absolutely recognized.
And I think
Certainly,
it's really important that he does meet with Dank and explain everything to Dank and so on and so forth. Because $26 million is a lot better than 42 million.
that's correct.
And to see just what we can use that we've already paid for out of that $2 million.
Correct.
Agreed.
I wanna throw something in there too, talking about that 2 million, and Mark touched on it. The fact that this redesign has the potential for significant savings. The potential is there to be able to pay off that $2 million indebtedness,
Mhm.
which would allow the town to redesign district
Exactly.
and create primarily a district right along the lakefront, which is gonna be much more cost effective to service whatever system is implemented. And it just, from day one, this district was not designed properly. And not enough thought went into it as to how to facilitate all the different geographic elements in the town. And I think by doing what Mark's talking about, having a system that services just the lakefront, which is what we're trying to protect anyway. And if we can do that at half the price, it makes a lot of sense. And I know we're kicking around numbers from $100,000 for hookup down to maybe $50,000 to hook up if we went that route. That's number one. The other thing that I wanted to throw out there is, and we didn't really touch on it tonight, is the fact that this really needs to have community buy-in from the beginning before we go out to rebid, whether it's some type of I don't know if we would do a referendum, but somewhere where the community, the residents in the district would buy in, and there would be consensus on the equipment, the technology that's to be used, the location, the cost, all of those associated things. I think at that point, we would get more buy-in relative to the sewer easements. Right now, that's a huge problem. The sewer, I don't know why any contractor would bid this job with 20 to 25% of the district without easements to go onto those properties and do the job. I mean, time is money, and if you're a contractor and you're looking at delays of God only knows how long before you can get the easement in place, your bids are gonna be sky high because they're gonna protect themselves, their bottom line. And I think that if you get community buy-in up front before you go out to rebid and get those easements in hand, because the people are in agreement with the system, the price, and everything else about it, I think it's gonna make for a much better bidding process. And I would suggest strongly that before we even think about going out to rebid, that we get total community buy-in, or as much as we can get. Certainly better than what we have now. What do we have? 75% maybe participation, 20 to 25% that don't want to participate. And of that, how many are just outright refusals? They aren't going to sign a sewer easement. So, and that's a very expensive and time-consuming process. We talked about that as well. The numbers that were quoted to the town for the to go ahead and force the easements through eminent domain, the dollars and the timing, I don't think are anywhere near adequate or accurate at all, because people that are not going to sign their easements, they're gonna take you to task on it, and it's gonna be, it's not gonna be a couple of months, it's gonna be a couple of years before that's all resolved. So it's just, like I said, as a contractor and looking at this, knowing that the easements aren't in hand, I'm gonna steer clear of it. So just, that's my personal thoughts. So we talked about this as a group, but it's nothing.
Those recommendations are coming up.
Oh, they're still on here?
Yeah.
We haven't got that far?
No,
I thought
that's a good
done.
warm up. It's a good warm up. We'll get there. But before we move away from this one, as far as a specific location within the harbor, the concept would be, just as Karen was saying, that if you locate it on a big body of water instead of a constrained stream, there's a lot of money to be saved. And so the specific location, nothing's for sale. This was just a concept that potentially it would be pursued. And then two, just comparing apples to apples, the dollar figure for the physical construction is, for the step system currently as is, it's not 40 million, it's about 34, just under 34. Still a big number, still a big gap between the conceptual 26 and 34, but there's add-ons, right? There's contingency, et cetera. So that's where you get the 40. So the real number to compare it against is 34.
You have contingency built in yours though, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
The other thing is still, and I think is to what we're talking about, the eminent domain is still a
We'll get there.
really.
There's a whole separate.
Okay.
Well,
But that's a
but I think
huge
what you're
unknown
saying
in
is
the
with the
cost.
revised design, there might be a lot more,
Might be less.
there might be a lot more
Let-
cooperation,
let's-
I was gonna say.
Let's
but
talk about
keep-
that when we get there.
Keep going. All right, number 9.
I have some
Moving.
significance.
Just one thing on that back, the conceptual design and whatnot. It is not gonna be like, when you go into Adams, that sewer treatment plant, you're not talking that in the middle of the harbor.
No,
Let's get
Or
that
nothing.
clear,
Correct.
no,
right?
Step wasn't either.
yeah.
Step
no.
wasn't either
Step
though.
wasn't either,
Yeah,
yeah. I
step
mean,
wasn't
it's
either.
still, we're still having primary treatment done at each EDU with their septic tanks. We're still looking at, vacuuming essentially the effluent from that. And that takes away a lot of the concerns of odors and solids handling and, treatment, in a densely populated.
So you're gonna go through, we're gonna get to your plan in this briefing.
Not here, no.
No.
So I still wanna take away from this, but,
Are we ready to move on to number 9?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank
So recommend a complete independent financial audit be conducted from
It's
district
here.
formation to present, audit for potential occurrence of double billing. So that I have put into the RFP for,
Okay,
I just
That's
presented that
good.
last night, an RFP for an overall town financial audit, and I concluded all large capital projects. So this would be audited with that. And we're putting that out to bid.
okay.
Okay, all right. You want me to read it?
Sure.
Review potential for any discounts the town could receive if the town procured and shipped step system instead of the construction contractor. That's a good
That
one.
seems like a no-brainer to me. I
Yeah.
don't know, if we have that ability.
So and they were here twice with that step system, you're talking about the
The big green tank. Yeah.
So one of the things that was brought up is that by them shipping it and they're sending their people to put it together, there was a protection for us if there was anything put together wrong. If we are gonna go do that, and then they will not be liable for if there's any defects or problems.
But I think that, if I understand that correctly, it's not so much about, when you say they,
So it's not, they don't.
Oh, right.
they-
Contractors, you
Right.
mean, or who?
yeah, I guess I just like, the contractors are the ones buying these, and what I think the suggestion is, if I'm understanding it, town buys them. We buy 400 of them, or what, how to,
So
you
you're
know,
talking
and
about the town purchasing them?
town purchases them at our cost, whatever, we put them out back until the contractor needs them, or, until they're ready to go. type thing.
So this is something that Dank would look for us. I would 100% sign that with Dank.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, I know a lot of municipalities stockpile pipe, right?
Yeah.
When a contractor gets awarded the job, they pull it from the stockpile, right? That the municipality already has.
And they're manufactured in Syracuse and Watertown, not getting them all the way from Washington State or Oregon. The added cost of all that.
Yeah, it's, when I said I use the average of the existing, bids that we had. I think there is a considerable, a plastic septic tank from Watertown is more in the neighborhood of $3,000, $4,000, but I used $15,000 because that was the average cost that bidders, had.
Great suggestion.
I
So-
think we ought to investigate that.
Yeah.
Just go and see what it would cost for the total materials that they were providing from Oregon, and what's the cost delivered here, and then when you have an idea that it is a better or not as good as we hope.
So the assembly is associated with the Orenco design. The Orenco pump assembly is already assembled. It just needs to be installed and connected to the tank that's gonna be assembled.
And they were
Yeah.
so.
But raw tank doesn't require assembly.
Are there any patent issues that have to be concerned about?
No, there's many pump vendors, provide the step. Step is just septic tank effluent pump. There's nothing proprietary about that.
All right, so we would have Dank look at that? Cool. Next, evaluate bid alternatives to the specific step components. Are there, keep moving. 12, recommend the town board proactively initiate a permissive referendum so that the town board receive confirmation of acceptance of residents to the new funding and cost structure. If the law allows, this should occur prior to construction rebid.
We are looking
We do,
at that,
yep.
but I think to Gary's point, depending on what you look at, is the system could very well change your community's involvement in whether we have to do it or we don't have to do it.
Yep.
And the only way that it would be not a catch-22 is if you had the bids in.
Correct.
Yeah,
You'd have to go to bid, and then you have to evaluate it.
Well, I'm not so sure on that, in the sense that, we might, and Gary, you might know the answer to this off the top of my head, but I believe we have to reform the district and redo those proceedings if we were to stay the course and move forward right now, because the cost has changed. I think that would
Yeah, so
trigger
So in the current schedule that Gama put together, they included a permissive referendum. We told them it's likely, right, that we would expect, and we could proactively just say, all right, we're just gonna mandate that we do a referendum. Don't even wait for the petition.
Yeah.
So that's required if we move the funding from the current project, which was 28. So it's required,
But it's required
Well, the
whether,
permissive
Right.
referendum is required.
specifically on the cost.
Right, and so
Yeah.
we could proactively
Yes.
do that. I'm not sure if that achieves this goal. That's if we stay this path and move forward.
Well, that's what we gotta understand is, we don't have to do it twice. We
Exactly.
wanna make sure it's valid, et cetera, but
Yeah.
we're factoring in that schedule that Dank's now producing needs to factor in this process.
my thinking is optimistic in that if the system is what the community wants, when they get the opportunity to do a permissive referendum, they wouldn't choose to do that, which means somebody has to go get percentage of the signatures
Yep, and all
and
that.
turn it back in.
Well,
I
yeah, but it's a
agree with what-
ridiculously low number, I think, right, for the number of signatures?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Depends on this.
it's a
Time of year.
percentage of the occupants.
I agree with what Dave's saying is we've got to get this timeline together because then we'll see where
Correct.
where do we make the decision on the redesign? Does the permissive referendum?
You keep mentioning redesigning the district. Are you referencing looking at the different options within the district that's already there? Because my understanding that one meeting we're on is that this district has been established and we can't make it go small.
Because we have.
But you're looking at the district itself and
If we paid off
But
the
they
guy,
are,
right?
but if you were
that-
listening to Gary was recommending paying that off. So then starting it over, basically.
So if your bid went from 40 million to 26 million, we could pay off the 2 million that we owe, still stay within the funding opportunity and redesign the district. So-
Maybe,
Maybe.
right?
No, I'm
I don't know if the
saying-
granting
no,
agencies will let us do that or not. I don't know.
I'm just saying it's not.
It's definitely something to look into.
That's what,
but I was thinking you were more looking at.
So
We can
specific to
roll
this,
that in the city.
Just wonder if that affects any of the grant money? If
Yes.
I-
Well, that's what we're
That's my
saying, we don't
point, is
know.
would it-
Yeah, we don't
And
Right.
it could very well, we don't know.
but specific to this, just the mere fact that it's now a $40 million project, that kicks us into the permissive referendum process.
Seems that you risk getting into the same situation again, though. You get the referendum, you tell people, we estimate the cost is gonna be X, but we won't know until we go out and get a bid again, and it comes back twice the price. You haven't gained.
Yeah, so this would be before the bid.
That's right. So you can't tell the community, we have a fixed price and that's what it's gonna cost you. It's just like before, we think it's gonna cost.
Well, it
X.
would, no, we would still have to say it's going to not to exceed
Yes,
this, right?
provided.
Because we're obligated by the rules of permissive referendum to put that number out there. It could be less.
Yeah. and I
So it
think-
could mean they get no system. If the bids come back again above that limit.
Well, yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, we've already been through this process. It's just that the permissive referendum has never been triggered. But we've already done those steps, outlined the legal paperwork. Just nobody's taken up the actual petition to force the referendum. And I think the idea that's kind of being discussed up here now is to not even wait for that to be forced, to proactively offer the referendum.
Mandated is the word.
Is it, okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
And again, mandating the referendum does what? Just so I can lost the traffic.
So there's several things that we as a body can do that trigger the referendum or trigger the permissive referendum. What that does is, and if we mandate it or the petitions mandate it, it goes to a special vote and it gets complicated. I don't think any of us up here truly understand all the logistics of it. The county conducts a special referendum in town. It doesn't necessarily have to do with your voting status in town. It has to do with your property ownership status.
And if you're in the district.
And if you're in the district. And you basically vote, are you in favor of this or not?
It's who's on the deed, right?
Kind of like a proposition, you're gonna come in and. they're
Very
gonna-
similar,
they're gonna-
yep,
Okay.
yep, yep.
Thank you.
And actually, and if you're interested, I'm sure you'll be able to find something. The town of Lyme did this over the past, maybe back in the spring or something. Was it that long ago?
it's well over a year ago.
Okay. For a water district that they were doing and they, I believe,
Lost it.
turned it down, yeah, because the people said, hey, it's too much money and they just, so. So there's a news story if you want
Yeah.
to talk about that.
Matt, there's another component.
Ginger had her hand up, wait a minute.
Sorry, just if Gary's gonna clarify something.
I just wanted to say that when a board mandates a referendum on an issue that's controversial, you would be shocked at the buy-in by the community. They're saying, well, we don't have to go get petitions. They're gonna give us a referendum so we can vote on this. I did it, and I'll tell you, it was remarkable because.
The percentage of people that participate,
I'm sorry?
the percentage of people that participate in the voting?
Those people that were, it was a controversial issue and it had the potential to become a permissive referendum. We as a board said, we're not even gonna go that route. We're gonna have a referendum
Yeah.
so that you vote, you get your say, you can vote on this. And it was so well received. I said, man, we're never gonna.
Why wait, right?
Why?
Yeah, just always
Yeah.
mandate it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's something to be said, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just let the people
It's,
literally
Yeah.
have their say.
Ginger?
Last fall, when Gymo added the 32 parcels up on Route 3. And now researching back, I did not know, we could have done a petition and had a permissive referendum then. We weren't educated on that. That would have gone out to a vote because in the wording that Gymo put down, if you look at the contract and in the resolution and whatnot, it was adding the parcels because of the historic flooding of high water in 2017 and 2019, why they were included.
That was, I mean, I can assure you, Ginger, and I'm not sure of all the times it's happened, but every time this board has done something that would be subject to permissive referendum, it was stated in the.
But it wasn't clear like you're making clear now. It was like, in hindsight, looking back, I could have gone out and got petitions and done that, and then, so you're saying now that you are going to absolutely just trigger it before having to go out and get the petitions to do that for it to become the permissive referendum.
I'm not sure if any of us have enough
Information.
understanding and
Yeah.
information on
I don't think we're,
saying that we are 100% going to mandate.
but I don't think anyone's opposed to it. I think,
Yeah.
right? Are we saying no one's opposed to doing a referendum? Is that, I mean, that's, I think we're trying to
Well,
figure out.
and I think conceptually, there's an argument that, again, I still need a little legal clarification on it, but that would actually be a faster process. In other words, if we mandate the referendum, we don't have to wait for someone to potentially get those signatures to trigger it. So it might actually be a quicker way.
Can you tell me those ones?
And I certainly think it-
The ones on Route 3, and it was worded.
Let's get back to Diane.
Okay,
Yeah.
number 14.
13. All right, so 13, I think is what Gary already addressed. Prior to any rebid, all necessary easements must be obtained to ensure the most cost-effective bid.
That's at a priority with Dave right now.
So, okay.
I didn't realize that we had more.
No, you already gave an excellent explanation.
that's
and
already
you've got
done.
that.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so that was always part of the plan, is to get those easements. So I know some of us, I know Judy and me, we've been at this for over 2 years, knocked on a lot of doors. I'd like to get some insight on how we do this. Because people have heard me up here before. There's
You're not gonna get.
10 people at least that they're just not even gonna answer you. So I'm all for this 100%, but I would like some insight on how we physically do it. We've been trying for a couple of years.
Well, I'd like to question the realisticness of it, and I'm not trying to call into question,
I buy in.
Validity of
This
the
definitely
report.
needs to be done before the construction, no question.
but how do you get 100%?
I don't think you're going to.
I just don't know. I mean, is that realistic?
You don't need 100, but you can have
I think it'd
75.
be a lot closer to 100.
Yeah.
If-
What's our number? I mean, I guess that's my
The
question.
current system that's being. What do I call it? Anyway,
What's a reasonable target, you guys think? I mean, I am actually trying to put all three of you on the spot right
If we went with
now.
something different, I think people would be more susceptible to signing off.
A redesign
I
of the
bet you
current
could get at
system.
least another 10 to 15% more, just by changing systems.
I mean, some people we've tried to reach out to, and Dave can verify this, they don't even know what the system is. They just won't answer you.
There's a lot of people that signed off on it that now we're saying.
No, I understand, but I'm talking about people that we can't even,
The
don't
referendum will
even
take
know
care of
what the
that.
system
I'm just
is,
saying.
that won't answer.
So I agree with you, but that's still not 100%.
Yeah,
No,
by any means.
I don't think you're ever gonna get 100%, but you're gonna get a lot closer to where.
Yeah.
But we will know what we need to do to finish the project. So right now, we don't know. There's 35 places that are absolutely required to do the current project as we have, and there's another 30 or 28 or whatever that we'd like to have. What I'm understanding from is that we should be a lot closer than we are before we put it out there and then start backtracking. So that's our goal, to get to being in a system that's more accommodating to the easements that we have or we could acquire.
Is anything in the redesign anticipating circumventing those properties?
I'm not sure what you mean, the redesign circumventing.
Well, is there a way to avoid those properties so we don't have to get the eminent domain easements?
I don't really know, because I don't know which properties they are. And I know we can't build in the County Route 123 because it's county property. So we have to avoid that. I'm quite sure we've had this discussion with GYMO before, and wherever there was areas that they could avoid those properties, they have.
There's another factor in that I'll go into, and that Dave may uncover that when they're looking at the zoning. But there's a New York State guidance in there, is if you put a public sewer system in, they kind of don't have an option. So it'll be interesting when Dave starts getting in there. But that is very black and white in the New York State guidance with communities, public sewer systems. So even though we keep going and we say, and yes, we have to do this whole
5-step process.
five-step process. Yeah, okay, don't put it in, but it goes by, and then the health department may come in and say, property is no go. It may not at the time, but it may when it comes time to sell it. You gotta hook it up. So there's some stuff that hopefully maybe Dank will be able to clarify that part.
Yeah, that would be in the sewer use law. They've actually already stated, they provided already some insight we weren't aware of, so.
Well, I think this isn't their first rodeo either, so I think it would be good to talk to them and say, what are some options for us here, once they dig into the project. All right, last but not least,
Freezing?
freezing, yes. Perform engineering study to determine if design is vulnerable to freezing.
Right, so we kind of, I know we've talked about this before, but the fact that the tank isn't buried, the outlet of the tank, the high point comes out. Right now, it's buried 18 inches. And just, theoretically, it looks like that would cause a freezing problem if people were gone for the week or only come up on the weekend. We called around the continent, and sure enough, there's a couple communities that actually happens. Exactly how we theorized, that if it's infrequently used, or in the case of Red Hook, it was a business that was closed on the weekends. They come back Monday, it's frozen. So there's devil in the details. In their case, it was only buried 2 inches. Ours is 18. Anyway, there's a whole study that should be done here, because even the alternate design uses the step system. So there's a vulnerability here. GYMO has redesigned it since we challenged them. So it is a better design. The question is, it was qualitatively done, not quantitatively done. So we're asking for more assurance here through calculations that would show that, the current design, as it was redesigned, it's deeper now, there's more insulation, et cetera. Is that adequate enough, theoretically? So again, there's a town in New York, North Creek. They're significantly colder than us, and they don't have any freezing. And it's a seasonal community where it's a ski community where people are gone during the week. However, they're 36 inches deep. So that might be the variable that we're missing here. But anyway, there's solutions. There's a town that's significantly colder than us that doesn't have freezing. And by the way, they're in the process of doing the whole town. Right now, it's like 14 houses, and they're doing the whole town now based on the success of that. So there's a way around it. And either way, the alternate design is also using the step system. So we need to get an answer there.
The other question though is how how deep is it down the rock? Do they have to, is it all dirt or is it rock? Cause that makes a big difference how
Right.
deep you can go.
Yep.
And it costs.
Costly.
Right, right. I suspect that's why ours isn't 36 inches deep. Right. Well, there's details there, right? I mean, Red Hook was 2, having issues, and they're right outside New York City where, North Creek has 0, so that's engineering, right? There's details that needs to be done, and it should be more quantitative than it is now. That's what this one's looking for. So we'll go over that with Dank as well. I'm looking for a calculation that shows, provides more assurance that we're not gonna have a problem.
So when is the first meeting with Dank? We haven't set that up yet.
They're waiting documentation, so Dave
Okay.
and committee member have sent them a lot. Wendy's working on some and Donna's working on some funding. So once they get it, but I think they're reviewing it as they get it to come in. It won't be a week.
Awesome.
But she did say there would be several meetings with a group of us to kind of be able to see where we're gonna go. So, and that was Carrie, not Thomas, so I'm sure Thomas was.
Yeah. Ginger?
Last night, Gary told us about the Cornell that came in and did the analysis of Harbor Road, County Route 123. And Gary, did they recommend an independent engineer to do a cost analysis of redoing the whole road?
Their recommendation was that we get a professional engineering report on the condition of all of the drainage, the culverts, and the road itself, so that we had, and the anticipated costs to bring it up to code, the way it should be. So that was the recommendation, that we get a professional engineering report done. So,
The county recommended that.
no, not the county.
Oh, okay. I
No,
was gonna say,
it's
Cornell
the board
local
asked me
roads.
to reach out to Cornell Cooperative,
Okay.
it's the Cornell Local Roads Program. And they actually have an engineering staff that will assist you with different projects. So they came up and looked at 123, through the whole process. And their recommendation was that we get a professional engineering, a more detailed, and theirs was more of a visual inspection. They needed, they said you need to have an actual inspection of the culverts, the drainage, the whole 9 yards. Because it's, what they said was from where Harborview Road, what is that, County Route
72.
70 comes down and meets 123. From there south, all the way up almost to 178. So that's gonna require complete rebuild. There's so much water damage from that water coming off the hills. So, but the other way, they said that the pavement is salvageable. It can be milled and filled. But there's also culvert work going north that needs to be done as well.
So that's gonna be included in the schedule. When we get the construction, then I personally think this will be our longest lead time, because we're gonna have to go back to the county, right? To get more, that's all gonna take time, their legislative process, but everything that's needed to get construction started, whether it's County 123, eminent domain, every little detail needs to be in the schedule so we can all start working on them and understand how they all fit together to the point of, when would construction start? That's what we're missing right now. And that's what project management is. This is not unusual. You get a list after list of issues you gotta resolve, and you resolve them and get to the end and you're good to go. So that's the key, is to track all these items and get them all done, work in parallel and get them done.
Well, thank you very much for all your hard work. We
I
appreciate it
really,
greatly.
what you guys have done in the last few months has been incredible, and I think,
I'll tell you.
and you're not done, so I hope that, they,
We're being nice to you, keep
Mark
helping us.
deserves all the credit. He's the one that's put ungodly number of hours together, putting this thing
for
together.
20 years.
So a lot the last couple of months, so I agree with you.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
But thank you all,
Yeah.
all of you, but it is critical that we be able to have conversations to take this to the next level, so.
Now we have options, which I don't feel we had before.
And a lot more visibility, so.
And none of this panel has been paid anything. They've done this all volunteer and because they care about this community and want the best system for all of us that are in the district.
Yep, agreed.
Anything else on the agenda tonight?
No,
Anybody have?
I think just if the public has any other comments, but probably. Oh, good.
Any more comments from the floor?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Motion to adjourn,
Make the motion.
second? Carried, thank you.
Thank you.
You gotta go, don't you?
Can you, Matt?
Oh, I don't.
Yeah.
Did we?
you can hit that button in the middle, you start there.